we want to talk about this idea of policy making, this mechanism of policy making? Aside from the fact that this is one of the skills and competencies raised in the previous workshop, it's really a competency that is taught in the Ateneo School of Government quite extensively. So not just policy making in the general sense, but also in specific instances like policy making in the national security area, in the environmental protection area. The first point that I'd like to raise is that when we talk about policy making in the parliamentary context, what we're talking about is policy making in the context of a constitutional democracy. I begin with this point because when we talk about checks and balances and separation of powers, there's a slightly different understanding of these principles in the parliamentary context, at least different from how we understand it in the presidential context. But in relation to policy making, I'd like to highlight, in my opinion, the main distinction. Of course, there are others who would argue that this is just a minor distinction, but for me, this is a fundamental distinction between a presidential system and a parliamentary system that has a big impact on policy making. In the presidential system, executive power is vested on the president, okay? The person of the president, the individual who is the president. And that person, that individual, is elected directly by the people. Okay? In the presidential setup, it is very easy to visualize the idea of separation of powers because the constitutional text itself shows that the president has one article and Congress has another article. In a parliamentary system, the story is slightly different. Executive authority, the policy-making authority in the parliamentary system is not vested in a single individual. It is vested in a group of individuals. It is vested on a team, which is called the cabinet. Executive authority is not vested on the prime minister. Okay. Executive authority is given to the executive government, which is the cabinet. Now, here is the peculiar thing. In the parliamentary system, executive authority is given to a group of people who are also members of the legislative branch. So therefore, the separation of the executive and the legislative becomes a little bit blurred when it comes to the parliamentary system. It is more difficult to visualize in contrast to a presidential system. Now that impacts policy making because the application of checks and balances becomes also more challenging. It requires more sophistication in terms of how it is applied in a parliamentary system. Policy making in the parliamentary system does not begin and end with the cabinet. The executive branch in the parliamentary system is bound by a more deliberative process in policy making. It does not begin and end with the executive branch. Policy making in a parliamentary system is more deliberative rather than consultative. So let me illustrate that deliberative ethos in policy making in a parliamentary system. So this picture is actually a screen grab from a viral video. No? So this situation here is about the very infamous, very famous misogynist speech of then Prime Minister of Australia, Julia Gillard. So in this video, Julia Gillard is actually berating the opposition leader, Tony Abbott, for his misogynistic behavior. So but that's not the point I'm raising here. If you look at this picture, for me this clearly illustrates that deliberative scenario that I've been talking about. One, here the Prime Minister representing the executive branch. If you look at that, if you see look at the picture, they are still part of the parliament, right? Why? Why do I say that? Because she is still at the floor of the parliament. She does not enjoy any elevated stature that the president would enjoy. She is still part of the parliament, and that is clearly seen where they are doing the discussion. They are doing the discussion at the floor of the parliament. She is now debating, discussing with her peers at the parliament. So there is no unequal stature between the Prime Minister and the rest of the parliament when it comes to policy making, when it comes to law making. Because in the parliament, all of them are seen as members of the parliament. The Prime Minister does not have the position similar to a president in the presidential system. Now, why is that relevant in policy making? Because as exemplified or as illustrated in this situation, the parliament can actually hold the executive branch to account for the policies that come out from the executive branch. In this situation, the opposition side asks questions on the government side, right? And asks them, what are your policies? Or what about these policies that you're coming out with, right? And then the government side can also defend their positions on an equal stature, on an equal platform. So that is the deliberative process that I've been talking about. Deliberative process in policy making in the context of a parliamentary system, where the Prime Minister or the executive branch is held to account by the parliament. That is a distinction that I'd like to highlight, because that doesn't happen in the presidential system. As I said, our goal here is to help the way we design the Bangsamoro Parliament. Because that's our goal now, right? All of us here want to have a Bangsamoro Parliament that we can all be proud of. That can be an exemplar of good governance. So who are the main protagonists of this policy-making process in the Bangsamoro Parliament? The first one is the Chief Minister. The Chief Minister is the head of the executive branch. In the Bangsamoro Parliament context, the Chief Minister is elected by the Parliament. Normally, the Prime Minister is elected by the majority party in the Parliament. But here, in the Bangsamoro context, the Chief Minister is elected by the entire Parliament. For me, it's important because it opens the possibility for coalition building, for the practice of coalition building. Now that's positive for me because it allows for a more the possibility of a cohesive parliament. If indeed the Bangsamoro Parliament fosters the practice of coalition building, the hope is that it is based on a culture of consensus building. Meaning, it is a culture. Culture where we agree on policy lines, political lines. So another interesting aspect of the Bangsamoro Parliament is that even the deputies, the deputy chief ministers, are elected by the Parliament. So they are not appointed by the chief minister, which is normally what happens in the parliamentary system. So again, to me, that's something positive because it also opens up the possibility of power sharing, right? Coalition building, but also power sharing. Now, I see that as a positive development because, again, it allows the possibility for a cohesive, productive parliament. Another interesting aspect of this is that the BOL actually authorizes the chief minister to appoint a cabinet member who is not a member of the parliament. Now, that's unusual, but for me, it's good. It potentially can lead to good because the chief minister can recognize that in some government portfolio or some governance portfolio needs the leadership of an expert. That impacts policy making because we need policymakers who have the necessary technical background. In some aspect of government, we need policies that are managed by leaders who have the necessary scientific or technical background or professional background. The reality is, policies or policy direction is determined by the majority party in the parliament. Majority party or the coalition, a coalition of parties that form the majority in the parliament. And not just policy direction, even the legislative agenda is determined by the majority party or the coalition of parties that form the majority. This is just the reality. Okay? Which brings us to the point that political parties are important to a working parliament. Okay? Genuine political parties are vital for an effective and robust parliament. I would also like to raise the point that the opposition party also plays a key role. Okay? Opposition party or minority party, whatever you want to call it, but those who do not comprise the majority also play a key role in maintaining a very healthy and robust parliament. Opposition parties must not just criticize the policies offered by the government of the day. They should also offer alternative policies. The role of the opposition is to fiscalize the policy-making task of the government of the day. It is not to be a hindrance to the government of the day. Okay? So, what are genuine political parties? For me, these are the requirements. Number one, they should be comprised of real members, okay? Meaning members that real people, okay? Not just politicians. Political parties, to be genuine, must also have real policy programs, real policy platforms. Okay? But more than that, they should be able to communicate those policy platforms to the public. And more importantly, and this is the key, political parties, to be genuine political parties, must be keen to debate and discuss policy, not just with their critics, but with the public at large. They must exemplify that deliberative ethos. Because we want that to translate in the parliament. Civil society organizations play a big role in political party building, particularly in this region. Civil society also is a good source of ideas for policies. In fact, civil society organizations are often described as policy entrepreneurs because they have done the research, both in academic terms and also empirical research, and therefore their advocacy can be a good source for policy recommendations. So civil society in this region can help political parties in that area to produce
evidence-based, research-based policy recommendations. We all know this statement. We all believe this statement. And in fact, it's not just true for the Bangsamoro. It's also true for the Philippines. Business as usual for the Philippines will be disastrous. But I say this as my last point because I often hear people say that the BOL is not a perfect law. So we can debate about that, but that's not the time. This is not the time for that. For me, I look at the BOL and I see an opportunity for us to transform the region. Well, of course, the process behind that opportunity is not an easy process. It is a very difficult process. The opportunity that it offers entails a very difficult process. I hope that this presentation, the process, or lessons, just a little bit, lessens the difficulty. So thank you very much and good morning. Thank you for listening.